I think sometimes Jesus disappoints. Not to be critical of our Savior, but if Jesus would have been a little more specific sometimes, he might have saved us a lot of trouble down the line. Like before he ascended on Pentecost, could he have at least explained a little bit what the church should look like? This would have saved us a lot of grief down the road and a lot of fighting over the centuries. Could he have at least given us a little hint about what happens after we die? Over the last couple of centuries, theologians, particularly in this country, have looked back at the Bible and pulled out little passages here and there. And they've used this to describe heaven and hell. And the pictures they paint of heaven and hell are pretty wild. Jesus seems to have taken on the beliefs of the afterlife of the first century Jewish culture, which is that when you die, you don't particularly go anyplace, and that there's no separation between our bodies and our soul. That's a Greek concept, not a Jewish concept. Like the Pharisees, Jesus believed that we are physically resurrected at some time in the future. But the Pharisees aren't quite sure when. Most Jews aren't quite sure when. This particular passage doesn't actually describe what's going to happen to us. We aren't going to be lined up facing God, or maybe facing St. Peter, divided into two groups based on how we treated the poor and how we treated the sick, and did we feed the hungry, and did we go to the prisons and all that kind of stuff. One group will go to heaven, and maybe we'll listen to angels playing on harps for eternity. And the other group will be burned in hell forever. Now, the best way to think of this passage is not as a description of the future, but as Jesus is presenting to his followers a way of taking stock of themselves in the present. And so it's a way of us taking stock of ourselves in the present. Now, like most of us, I go to the doctor for a regular checkup, periodically. As I get older, the more times I have to go for this checkup. I go for the checkup to see how my body is functioning, and my doctor and I make plans for the future. Well, for me, one of the parts of the checkup is my heart disease. How is my cholesterol? How are the various parts of my cholesterol, the LDL and the triglycerides and the HDL, all that kind of stuff? How is my blood pressure? How are my symptoms? And from there, I know where I am at that moment, and I can make plans for the future. If my cholesterol is high, then I know I have to watch what I eat. If it's low, then I know I'm okay. So on. Here, Jesus is offering his followers a checkup. But for them, and now for us, this is not a checkup on what we believe. I mean, who doesn't believe in feeding the hungry and giving water to the thirsty and helping the strangers and visiting people who are sick or visiting people in prison? Everyone raise your hand if you believe this. I can see most of you raising your hand because, well, you didn't know. I can see right through the YouTube. And there's some of you that aren't raising your hand because you're, yes, there we go. Got some more hands raised. Everybody believes this. Well, there's a movement in the Presbyterian Church to get churches to declare themselves to be Matthew 25 churches. Well, what church would say, we don't believe in helping the unfortunate, the poor, and we don't believe in feeding the hungry and helping people who are sick or in prison? No, when I go to the doctor, he doesn't ask me if I'm in favor of avoiding fat and sugar. Just to be clear, I am actually in favor of avoiding fat and sugar. But my doctor doesn't care about that. What my doctor is interested in is what I have actually been eating. It doesn't matter to my body what I believe. Have I actually avoided fat and sugar? That's what my doctor wants to know. And this is what Jesus is asking his followers. Not what do they believe. What have they done? What have they actually done? He asks, have we fed the hungry? Have we given water to the thirsty? Have we helped strangers, visited people who are sick or in prison? This passage is a chance to pause and reflect. Now, as we dig deeper into this passage, I think there is a more telling point to this story. Interestingly, the sheep, those who are the righteous, those who did good deeds, those who fed the hungry and visited the sick, they did so without the realization that God was watching. Now, if I were having lunch with my doctor, I certainly wouldn't order a cheeseburger and fries. But the test, what the checkup is measuring, is not what I do if I'm having lunch with my doctor. It's what do I do when I'm not with my doctor, when I'm at home, when I'm out in the world, when I'm with you. That's what my checkup is about. Just like believing, feeding the hungry and visiting the sick is easy to do. Feeding the hungry and visiting the sick is easy to do if we know that God is watching. But listen to the passage. The righteous are baffled. Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, and thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, and needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? They're baffled. They don't understand. No, salvation comes to them not because they're striving to do good, not because they are following the teachings of Jesus or the laws of Moses or even what their mother taught them they ought to do. Salvation is something that came to them when they are least expecting it. It's a discovery that what they are doing, that they are doing God's work in the world without realizing the reward, without even knowing that God was in their midst. The gift of this particular teaching of Jesus is that, unlike the righteous in the story, we are given a chance for a checkup. And we have been given insight into our future. We don't have to wait until we die to figure out whether we are sheep or goats, the righteous or the damned. We have the opportunity to pay attention to a midlife checkup, no matter when that midlife checkup happens in our lifetime. Amen.